Okay, hello, everybody. Welcome. We're going to call this meeting to order, and if everyone would stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, that'd be great.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, and liberty and justice for all.
Great, thank you all for coming out tonight. And as you can see, we have a little technical difficulties, but we do have Charlene Briggs joining us from the iPad, so which is great. And we did want to mention that before this meeting, we did have an executive session, which was for legal reasons. And we also wanted to approve the meetings from our last Board of Supervisors meeting. And just, as everyone has been requesting that they wanted to see those meeting minutes a little sooner, what we're going to do, we're going to try this out tonight, that if we approve them, then they'll almost immediately be available on the website. That Christina's going to try and put it right up there. So you can pull it right up and see it. We'll see how that works. So did you want to make a motion on that, Bernie?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of February 18th.
Okay. And I will second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So the meeting minutes are approved, and Christina is doing that as we wait. So we did want to make a couple of announcements tonight. We did want to let everybody know that Isabel Travellini, her meeting for the historic resources, where she was going to do a presentation on the Underground Railroad, keeps moving, but it is now definitely scheduled for tomorrow night, and that's definitely worth coming out to see. You'd like to see that?
Online it was the 11th.
I'm sorry?
I believe I saw the 11th.
Last month.
Yeah, it moved with the weather, and I think she might have been sick. So now it is tomorrow night at 7:00, and she was going to talk about the Underground Railroad. So,
Okay.
Thank you. So we're good with that. And, you're all here to talk about the Human Relations Commission, which I just want to make it really clear that, in order for this to be successful, we need participation, and we are looking for residents to volunteer to be on this commission. So, we could take 3 to 5 new people on that to make it a solid commission. And, hopefully those of you who are here tonight might be interested, and feel free to let us know that. We have a presentation tonight, which is going to be from the Phoenixville Human Relations Commission. And I believe only one person was going to be here tonight. Was that Lee was going to be here? Yeah. Okay. Lee, would you like to come on up and present for us?
No, thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me today. I am here from the Phoenixville Human Relations Commission, which I've served on since January 2022, so about 3 years. And there are 5 of us on the Human Relations Commission. I'm actually not our chair. I'm just the person who happened to be free on a Monday night to come out here. So we actually work together, the 5 of us, to prepare a short statement that just describes what we do and why we believe that the Human Relations Commission is important, and also hopefully anticipates a couple of your questions about how we operate over in Phoenixville. And then I also actually have a short letter from our Borough Council liaison. So we have a Borough Council member in Phoenixville who was assigned to our commission to kind of be the conduit between what we do and what the borough government does. So I have a short statement from her too, and you all have copies of those 2 things. The third thing you have a copy of is our flyer. That's what we currently use for outreach. So I'll read my statement and then our statement, and then I'm happy to answer questions that you all might have. To the honorable members of the West Vincent Township Board of Supervisors, I am here on behalf of the Phoenixville Human Relations Commission to provide a statement in support of the West Vincent Township Human Relations Commission and the township's anti-discrimination ordinance. In Phoenixville, as I'm sure you all do too in West Vincent, we believe that all individuals deserve dignity and respect and the opportunity to live in an inclusive and fair and supportive community. Our anti-discrimination ordinance and the Human Relations Commission that it created form the basis of a community value statement that reflects this belief. By supporting a locally run HRC and dedicated local ordinance, Phoenixville not only articulates but actively embodies these principles, empowering residents to engage in meaningful dialogue, to foster relationships, and to address community challenges together. Through the HRC, we work to help people from diverse groups with differing interests or identities understand that their shared values and experiences unite them as members of our Phoenixville community. A locally run Human Relations Commission, led by engaged folks with deep community interests, creates the necessary space to instill this collective identity. Here are a few ways the Phoenixville HRC works to support this collective identity among our residents. By mediating and providing resources to address situations of perceived bias or conflict in our community, even if formal discrimination complaints are not filed. By bringing together leaders from marginalized communities within our borough, or with bringing them together with borough officials for proactive conversations to prevent misunderstandings and ensure that all voices are heard. And by assessing our community along external benchmarks. For example, right now we are working on the Human Rights Campaign's National Municipal Equality Index, which is an assessment tool that helps us to showcase Phoenixville's character as a welcoming community throughout the region. We believe that only a locally run HRC built on neighbor-to-neighbor interactions and accountability is equipped to empower a community to work together to solve its problems using bottom-up solutions. Removing or undermining the local structure will invite more top-down mandates that might fail to understand or address the unique needs and challenges of West Vincent Township. A locally run HRC acts as connective tissue between elected officials and the community that they serve, engaging community stakeholders to identify local concerns and providing space to workshop a means to address them. And a locally run HRC can only do the work of strengthening its community if it has the legitimacy and authority to make its community aware, to recruit the right people, and to empower them to serve the mission. In Phoenixville, our HRC is empowered to engage with community stakeholders proactively and to raise awareness of the HRC as a resource for our community. In Phoenixville, formal community outreach takes place through efforts like printing and distributing flyers like the one that you have a copy of, tabling at public events, and especially attending meetings of other community groups. This helps us build relationships that create a pipeline for recruiting new HRC members and also open channels of communication, which can be used as issues arise. We've seen several instances where the relationships built through community outreach have helped us learn about and address concerns constructively without requiring formal complaints. For example, when a community member raised concerns about wheelchair accessibility at a local business, the individual felt comfortable approaching us on the HRC to voice their concerns. We supported that community member in addressing the issue directly with the business owner, and the two parties came to an amicable resolution that addressed the initial concern to both of their satisfaction. Similarly, when members of our community reached out to us about improving the police response to mental health crises, we were able to invite members of our local force to the table to discuss their training and their response procedures. Even though policing is outside of HRC's direct scope, we were able to serve as that conduit for community concerns and demonstrate that there is a municipal body with the mission and the capacity to take such important issues on as our primary concern. The fact that community members know that they can come to the HRC with their concerns is a huge asset and opportunity, both for our residents and for the borough government. These examples show how the HRC serves as a valuable community resource, fostering understanding and positive change through dialogue, rather than solely responding to formal complaints. This proactive approach allows greater access for community members than the legal system would alone, while also building stronger relationships between businesses, residents, and the local government. We understand that the political landscape can sometimes be unpredictable, but it is precisely in times of uncertainty that local governance and community-driven initiatives like the HRC become more vital. We cannot afford to allow decisions about our community to be dictated by external political pressures. Only by maintaining local authority can we ensure that our voices, needs, and values are represented in the most meaningful ways. We urge you to consider the long-term well-being and the unity of the community in the formulation of policies around your HRC. The work of the HRC is not just about addressing problems as they arise, but about building a future and a community where all people, regardless of background, can thrive together in a fair and just society. We appreciate the opportunity to share our perspective and hope that you will continue to support the West Vincent Township HRC.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
How often does your commission meet outside of a complaint?
We have a regular monthly meeting.
You
So we
have a
meet on the
monthly
first Wednesday of every month.
And what do you do during that meeting?
We talk about any situations that have come to our attention, if we have any correspondence from folks who've reached out to us. But we also talk about, right now, we are in kind of we're sort of still in a reorganizing phase and a rebuilding phase after we had a lot of turnover right around the time that I joined the HRC. Our chair actually sadly passed away, Bill Davidson, who I know had supported, I think, this HRC substantially in its early years. So we've spent a lot of time getting back up to speed. So we've done some trainings during that time. The state HRC for Pennsylvania will do virtual trainings. So we've done a few of those. And then we also have talked a lot about how to do outreach, how to make connections, which community meetings to go to, things like that.
And have you had complaints?
We have not had any formal complaints.
Okay.
It's been very interesting. When folks reach out to us, we explain to them what the formal process is, but we're also willing to have a conversation, like I said, with them and the other party. And for the most part, people want to do that before they fill out paperwork and feel like they're going to be in this complaint process. And so far, we've been able to resolve everything informally.
And I have one more question before we turn it over to anyone else who has. So were you able to look at our ordinance changes that are proposed at all?
I did briefly. I don't know that I
Okay.
memorized them, but yes.
And I was just wondering because we have expanded the protected class. And I was just wondering if these were the same as what Phoenixville had, if it's additional, if it's comparable.
I can read you what is protected in our ordinance. I have it on my phone. I believe that the classes you're planning to add are not currently in our ordinance. So we have on the basis of actual or perceived race, color, sex, religion, ancestry, national origin, sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, familial status, marital status, age, mental or physical disability, and use of guide or support animals and or mechanical aids. That's what's in our ordinance.
Have you considered the hair issue? We're all aware of.
In my time, it hasn't come up in my 3 years. Yeah.
Thank you.
Great. Does anyone else have a question for Lee?
I have a question. I kind of want to expand on what you thought. That's okay.
I do have the letter from our council liaison, but if you'd rather just I can read it, or you have a copy of it.
Well, I do want to let you, I don't want to make you stuck up here this whole
Yeah,
time.
it is a lot of reading, I realized.
Through what you wanted to do, and if anyone has questions for you, and then we can take Chris's comment. Is that okay, Chris?
Whenever I'll patient.
Yeah, I just don't, I don't want to
No,
put
I
her on the
mean,
spot
you
here.
want to make a statement, I'd
Yes,
like to hear,
please,
I'd like to hear the liaison.
Go right ahead.
okay?
Sure. It's a little shorter, but it also has
Okay.
one more example, which might be helpful. So this was an email, so it's a little informally written, but my apologies that I will not be able to attend today. I wanted to share with you, this is Beth speaking, Beth Berkeley, who's our councilwoman. I wanted to share with you my experience as the council member liaison. The HRC did not have a liaison at first. I, Beth, am not a voting member and would not be part of a mediation or hearing a case. We did in Phoenixville consult our borough solicitor about the process of hearing cases and mediation. We also consulted with our borough solicitor about education and outreach. Our HRC members themselves are not yet providing community education, but rather we connect the community to different trainings and resources, and we raise awareness and strike a careful balance of connecting and uniting versus being the authority on education. At one point, the borough staff and other council members, this was around the time that we had turnover, were willing to allow our HRC to fade out as we did not have a quorum. They felt that since we had not had a complaint and there were state protections in place, that we did not need the local HRC. Yeah, Beth, I advocated against this as I knew that there was not enough awareness of the HRC as a resource. Therefore, the fact that we did not have any formal complaints was skewed, in her opinion, by the simple fact that those needing support did not know that this resource or system was available. This was very evident by a situation that occurred a few years ago during Pride Month. There was conversation about the Pride flags and the Pride walk. We have a colored rainbow walk on the street. Conversations among a small business owner, their patrons, and staff. The staff in this case were highly affected by this conversation. It became very emotionally charged and was, it turns out, then shared on social media very vocally and very publicly. Our HRC never received a formal complaint, but once we saw the social media posts, we reached out and we did end up assisting in mediation. If those involved had known that the HRC process existed, then they would have known that they could come to us for support. And Beth says, I personally believe that if they had known that we existed, the situation would have been better supported. Education and awareness can simply mean that the community is aware of the HRC as a resource, in addition to raising educational awareness and resources. And so she says, my personal statement about HRC when advocating to keep ours going was that, one, we cannot guarantee that there will always be federal or state protections. And two, the council that passed our local ordinance did not just do so to make a progressive or political statement, but to support and protect the community. Thanks.
I get one question. Phoenixville has adopted the expanded procedures.
They're in our ordinance. And the way that it's written in our ordinance is that we have to decide as a commission, and also the borough has to agree that we're going to use them. We haven't done that yet.
You have not done it yet.
No, it's written into our ordinance that we can.
Yeah, I have.
We have.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I just want to check, Charlene, if you can hear us, did you have any comments or you're good? Hopefully she's still there.
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay.
My question focused on the education and outreach and where you're targeting that.
We have a lot of public events in Phoenixville. We have First Fridays, and we've done tabling there. We have spent most of the last year or so, I would say, focusing on building community connections. So we have some other community groups. There's a group called Diversity in Action in Phoenixville. We've gone to their meetings. We've been working with local nonprofit organizations serving the immigrant community. So we've been doing more of the group-to-group outreach recently.
Thank you.
George had a question.
George, come on.
Yeah, what's your budget in here?
We don't have a budget. So we have a process where we can request funds if we have expenses. So far, I think our only expenses have been printing those flyers out for events.
What, I can probably look this up, but if you don't, then what's the population of the borough?
I don't know why I'm looking at you. 20,000? 19,000?
There's a number
Something
that
like
makes
that.
it a borough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's been a different side, too. Yeah. Barry has a question. I think.
What isn't a protected class? You listed all the protected classes. What wouldn't be a protected class?
Any group of people or demographic not listed, I imagine. But, every person has an identity that fits into one of those protected classes.
So everyone is protected. You really didn't need it, right? Everybody's protected.
Oh,
Everyone fits into one of those categories, I would suppose.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Chris, you were trying to.
I mean, there's certain things that are protected under codification, and there's certain things that are not. I mean, it's perfectly legal in the state of Pennsylvania to discriminate against somebody based upon their marital status. It's not codified. Any protections in the state and federal level right now are all by executive order or interpretation of Title IX. So that's why we need this ordinance at a local level. These protections are not law. They're by order or by interpretation of other laws.
I believe I did hear you say
Yeah.
that familial.
Familial status is
Yeah.
protected. That's
Christine's just saying, you're not, everyone who's not coming up isn't getting picked up. If you can come up to the microphone.
Yeah, sure. Fair. So for
Getting
those of you who have known me a long time, resident of West Vincent, I'm here for 52 years. My name's Chris Carroll, and in 2017, I kind of became the force behind getting the ordinance implemented. Let me get my notes here. As I was saying, there are certain protected classes. You cannot discriminate against someone based upon race, sex, familial status. That's the big one. If you discriminate against someone because they have kids, you're going to get sued out the wazoo, especially in housing. There are certain current protected statuses based upon executive orders and interpretation of Title IX, and those are going to go away. Guarantee you at the federal level, that's going away. Perfectly legal to discriminate against someone based upon their marital status, whether they're married or unmarried, hairstyle, natural hairstyle, gender identity, and sexual orientation. So it's basically on us at a local level to enact these protections because you cannot count on the state or the federal government to do it by executive order. It's not going to be permanent until they actually pass a law. And then, of course, they can always repeal that law later on if they want to. So this ordinance was eventually adopted, and I have to give props to West Vincent Township for doing it. It's a great stance to take. But immediately after the adoption 5 years ago, we noticed that there was a Scribner's error in the adoption because most of this ordinance was taken directly from Phoenix.
Excuse me, Chris, we are going to talk about the ordinance coming up. We're just trying to address Lee's question.
Okay.
Questions towards Lee, if you want to wait for that.
Is there anything in your ordinance that prohibits you from doing outreach?
No.
Okay. Or recruitment?
No.
Okay. All right, that's it.
Does anyone else have questions for Lee before we?
So I think my question with your specific list, not state, not federal. So basically you cover everybody, right? Everybody's equal. So anybody that has a perceived discrimination can come to you, right? There's really no need for the list. We just say everybody.
Well, the discrimination comes. If a person wants to file a formal discrimination complaint with us, the situation in which they believe they experience discrimination has to fall within one of those categories. So for example, right now, hair is not included, hair texture. If somebody came to us and said, I've been discriminated against because of my hair texture, it's not in our ordinance, and so we wouldn't actually support that. You see what I'm saying? Everybody falls into a protected class, but your discrimination has to be within, for a reason of one of those protected
I
classes.
wouldn't think that. I'm talking about people, hair, the way somebody looks. Listen, I'd have to be perceived discriminated against every day for the way I look. So,
Well, that's another example of it, that wouldn't be covered. If somebody discriminated against you because they thought you weren't attractive, that wouldn't be covered.
that's everything. So, God's sake, so the question is, isn't everybody, whatever it is, not how they look, but who they are, ethnicity, sexuality, all that. Everybody should be covered under that. It should be a list, right?
Well,
Race, everybody.
That might be beyond the scope of.
All right,
our
we
answer.
might be challenging.
That might be a Supreme Court question, not mine.
Yeah.
so then the question then is.
And everybody's just talking, we really need to come up and take turns and, to the microphone so that we can record this properly.
Okay, I'll ask you then a rhetorical question.
Okay.
Is if you're
Thank
going to
you.
include everybody, are you going to include people from all political backgrounds? Are you going to say that I have to rent to a neo-Nazi if they apply to rent a house from me? I mean, no, not everybody is not included. Read about the paradox of tolerance, and you'll understand that our society cannot tolerate everything, or it will absolutely fall apart. There has to be a red line, and when it comes to tolerating someone who wants to kill me because I'm Jewish, I'm not going to let that happen. You know, that's a ridiculous premise that everybody's going to be covered, because you can't do that in a society and have a society that functions. Otherwise, you're going to end up protecting people from far left and far right that are just trying to wreak havoc. And that's no political position is not a protected class. So.
And Lee, I'm curious, when someone would come to you that doesn't fit on these protected classes and they have a legitimate concern, but what do you do with them at that point? Do you turn them over somewhere else? How do you usually handle
It would certainly be case by case to some extent, but we did actually receive training on what is a protected class from the state. And they explained to us that if someone were to come, for example, and say, someone won't hire me or rent to me because I'm a Democrat, that's not a protected class. So we can't do a formal complaint. We might, in the interest of our community, offer to have a conversation, try to mediate the situation, but it would not be a formal complaint, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Thank you. And I think Jim was up before you.
I was going to ask a question about Phoenixville, but.
Sure.
Because that's your right?
Come on up to the mic,
I
please.
understand. Yeah. My question.
So far, we still know everybody's names, but.
Jim,
Yeah.
my question is, how long have you been integrally associated with the HRC?
I was appointed to the HRC in January 2022, so 3 years.
Did I hear you from the back that you have not had any
No formal complaints.
in 3 years?
Mhm.
In a borough of many times the population of West Hempstead Township?
That is correct.
Thank you. Oh, 19,354.
My question may not actually be directly towards you. I do have a couple of things. So I'm a real estate agent, so I deal with fair housing all the time. So when you're dealing with fair housing, we understand what you can do and you cannot do. I guess, what does Phoenixville do? So say somebody did something, discriminated against somebody in some way, shape, or form. Is there a punishment for it? I know there isn't fair housing. Right. So we don't do it. But from your perspective, is there a punishment? What happens if somebody does discriminate against somebody for something? What's the punishment?
It's spelled out in the ordinance, at least in Phoenixville, what our powers are. The steps are also spelled out. So if someone comes to us with a complaint, our first step is always to explain to them that legal process, ask if they want to submit a formal complaint, and then I believe the next step is attempting to mediate between the two parties. If the person is not willing to engage in mediation, or if mediation is unsuccessful, then that's the expanded powers that you were referring to. So we can decide, if the majority of the commission members and the majority of our borough council decide, we can investigate the claim. And we actually, if we elect to use those expanded powers, we can order some remedies that are spelled out in the ordinance.
So your understanding that you can use those remedies on an ad hoc basis?
We would have to decide by a majority vote along with the borough council that we were enacting those
When a claim comes before you?
at any time according to the ordinance.
Can you give me an example of a remedy?
I would have to read the ordinance.
I mean, it can be even just requesting an apology, right?
Mhm.
That could be.
Right, well,
Yeah.
that sounds like a simple one. I'm just saying, is
Yeah.
there something else? Is there, requesting an
Wages
apology
or
is one
something of
thing.
that sort, yeah. And it's all in the ordinance, which we can read here too. I'm pretty sure our ordinance is mirrored after yours. So that's part of why we thought it was really good to talk to you, because because there really was some question for us as to whether it was okay for the commission to meet, like, because, our zoning hearing board is only allowed to meet if they have a hearing. So we were under the impression that it was the same thing, but really going through this ordinance, I just don't see that it says anything either way. It really only talks about meeting for a complaint, but it doesn't say you can't, right? Would you say that's true, David? It's silent on that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's, they're trying to figure out the nuances of this ordinance.
Are we going to be talking more about the ordinance? We're going to be talking more about.
Yeah, that's the next thing.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And if
I
you
just
want
didn't
some
wanna
more,
make Lee feel that she was responsible for running this meeting and
I'm not a lawyer.
everyone's questions.
If you're curious about more examples also, I know that there are a number of other Montgomery County, Delaware County, Chester County, Bucks County, all have a number of different, a number of their municipalities have their own local ordinances as well. Bucks County actually has a countywide Human Relations Commission. And if you Google Bucks County Human Relations Commission, they have listed all of their municipalities that also have ordinances, and it describes what powers they do and don't have. Some have enacted the expanded procedures, some haven't. And it describes the different kinds of outreach that they do. So you can see more examples.
I appreciate it. And thank you for coming out. Does anyone else have a direct question for Lee? I think she's still going to be here. You do have a question? Go ahead.
I have a question. I also wanted to, if it's okay I am a lawyer, to answer Julia's question about remedies. Both of the ordinances reference the Pennsylvania Human Relations Act in terms of remedies, and they can be, injunctive relief, like saying the business has to cease or desist of the discrimination, compensation for lost work, making reasonable accommodations if it's a disability or religious discrimination matter. Sell or lease specified housing or commercial property, which would be applicable in the real estate context. Actual damages and other verifiable reasonable out-of-pocket costs like attorney's fees and filing costs. So those are the type of remedies that can be issued under the ordinance. And that's only after there's a hearing, though. In both of our ordinances, so there's an investigation, there's a probable cause finding, and then only after there's probable cause, there's a hearing, like the zoning hearing board does on the record. And then following that determination, there's an order, and like any district court order, they take that to the Court of Common Pleas for enforcement. So that's sort of, after the order is issued, our township's done with it. My question is, could you talk a little bit about the covered entities? So for example, say my neighbor calls me a name because I'm queer. Is that illegal discrimination of the ordinance, or does it have to be an adverse action by like a business that's protected under the statute? And it's a leading question.
That's a great question, and I'm honestly not sure I know the answer to it. From what I'm remembering from the training that we did, I believe there has to be an adverse action. I believe it's not just about speech. I think it has to show discrimination in some way, if that makes sense. That's what I remember from our training. And I can follow up if you want with our with the rest of my counsel or the borough solicitor to answer the question more specifically.
Thank you. Is there anyone else has a direct question for Lee, or should we move on and let her sit down and relax? Okay. Thank you very much. I really appreciate letting us put you on the hot spot. And we have no reports and no old business, so we're going to move along to the new business, which was presenting the red line changes to this ordinance. Number 191, 2020, anti-discrimination ordinance as requested by the Human Relations Commission to add protected classes. This is just something for discussion. It's been put out there. I don't know if there's any questions about this. We pretty much just talked about what a lot of those were. Chris, did you want to come up and talk about what they are? Or were you just, were you raising your hand or?
Yeah.
Okay. I wasn't sure.
I served, I was the person that kind of got the ball rolling,
Mhm.
served on the HRC. So I think maybe I can give a little bit of background on it real quickly. Marital status wasn't codified properly in the ordinance. So it's currently in the preamble to the ordinance, but it's not actually in the body of the ordinance. So it has to be readopted for it to be enforceable for marital status. That's number one. We've been trying to get this down the road for a couple of years now, and you guys know how fast government moves, okay? So rather than doing this piecemeal, the HRC said, hey, we're not going to want to get this bit by bit for protected classes. Let's just think about what else needs to be in here in addition to properly codifying marital status. We wanted to reiterate veteran status, which is currently protected at federal and state level, use of guide animals under the ADA. We're reiterating that as well. We wanted to expand it to natural hairstyles. People that can grow their hair naturally should not be discriminated against because they can grow it a certain way. And we also wanted to add a GED in lieu of high school diploma. Should not be something that's discriminated against. And I don't think there's anything else. I'm just recalling this from memory. Am I right, guys? Pretty much. So that's our proposal to the Board of Supervisors is let's get this done the right way, one final time. And then we can, if agreeable by everybody, we can try to get reappointed, get more people to apply, and meet as needed.
Right. And unfortunately, like these are changes that we couldn't make really without being in the sunshine, talking about.
Oh, I
them
understand.
doing
And
this
I'm
the
not
right way, and it's kind of drug out. And it's just time to do it.
right. Well,
Yeah.
I'm not blaming you guys. I mean, life happens and
Yep.
things move as fast or as slow as they do. But here we are finally, and we can discuss,
Wait, can I, so we'll move to the next item here is, how often you feel you need to meet. I feel like for the last 3 years, you've been meeting every month to talk about this because it's not getting done.
that's
So-
that's it. Yes, we were meeting and
Is this every month? Is it every?
well,
other month,
I think
once
it's
a quarter?
we're
What do
gonna,
you think
I
is
think we should be able to meet. Well, number one, if we get a complaint, we have to meet. Okay.
Right, that's a
We
whole
have to
different
meet.
subject.
If we can do outreach outside of this, on our own to try to let people know about the existence of the ordinance and try to get other people interested in coming to the meetings or volunteering, that's great too. I can't foresee meeting any more than once a month. It doesn't seem like necessary, especially if we start checking things off our checklist. We want to be able to publicize the HRC. We don't want to spend a ton of the township's money, and I think we can spread the news without doing so. I think we're basically limited towards, photocopies of flyers and an online presence. Both are.
Well, I will say that our township secretary, Christina Casey, does a beautiful job of printing, so.
Yeah. So
It's more than just flyers.
So anyway.
Very good at that.
So yeah, that was my initial concern and was getting marital status properly codified. And as a result of talking about that, we said, well, we don't want to cost the township more than it's going to cost to republish this. Let's just get it all done at once.
Well, given that it, as Dave is saying, because like we tried to go through this to figure it out, like, is it true that they can't meet? Can they meet?
I don't think so because.
What should we put in there?
Well,
for
number one,
regular
it says that we're allowed to meet to promulgate rules and regulations. It doesn't say that we can only meet when there's a complaint. If you look at the ordinance itself, it says we can meet for other specific reasons.
Right. I guess I'm just trying to say, how can we come up with something that makes sense, that makes it so that you'll have meaningful meetings?
Right.
Don't waste just even the resources of having to
Right.
unlock the door or
Sure.
not know whether you're coming. So,
Right. Right.
what do you think is
Well, I
realistic here?
think, is there any reason we need to change the language? Why can't the members of the HRC meet outside? Is that a violation of the Sunshine Act to do so? If we're just grabbing a cup of coffee to discuss this? I mean,
If you're conducting HRC business, it would.
what about just talking about outreach and how to attract people? If we're not actually voting on recommendations to the Board of Supervisors and passing any motions.
I think gathering to discuss any.
Any.
HRC would be-
So, maybe it's important
Unless
to,
it's advertised.
Okay.
As a meeting. As a
Mhm.
township meeting.
well, my main concern right now is getting these protected classes properly codified. Secondary to that is how often we can meet. So just,
So if we're approving all of these tonight. I mean, we would have to advertise it and actually do it. in
Right, I mean,
a meeting.
yeah,
But
exactly.
assuming that that's the purpose of us being here today is to see if we object to anything as a board.
Right, I mean, if you guys are able to figure out the proper terminology allowing us to meet in addition to receiving complaints, that's great. I can't see us meeting at, more than every couple of months after we get everything on our checklist done. There's not that much there. It's just raising awareness, really. Yeah. Yeah. Raising awareness, training, talking to other township employees, letting them know, what's permissible and what's not permissible in this township. That's all. Okay, I'm done.
Is that something we have to decide tonight or?
No, come up with
What do you
some,
think, Bernie?
I'll come up with some language. We're gonna have to formally adopt this, so I'll come up with some
Okay,
language.
and then
The
we'll
ordinance-
talk about it again.
Right, it'll be in that,
Right.
in that
And
ordinance.
that language that you're thinking of will permit us to meet outside of formal complaints then?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, because it wasn't that we were coming down on you for it, other than we're just starting to understand
Right.
the purpose of the meetings.
Well, my interpretation from reading it is we're allowed to meet to promulgate rules,
Mhm.
and procedures. And I'm like, well, that's outside of complaints. So here we are,
Right.
trying to do so.
Right, but I think that once we fit this in, then your only other reason would be to do outreach or education, training.
That's great. That's
Okay.
fine.
Great.
Um,
Julia.
a couple of things. By the way, there is a sign-in sheet up here that everyone was supposed to put their name and address on when they came up to speak.
So it's okay.
Well, I signed it.
Thank you, though. Thanks for following the rules, Julia.
I didn't see it before. Okay, I just have a couple of questions. Please explain this hair thing to me. What does that mean?
It means if African Americans can grow their hair many different ways, just by braiding it, straightening it,
Okay,
peeling it out. That's one thing. I'm white, but I can actually grow dreadlocks, and that's natural hair.
yes.
So why should somebody be refused an apartment because they have a certain hairstyle?
Well, that's that. Okay.
All
right.
That's not fair.
Back to Barry's question about doesn't everyone fall under a protected class if this is the case? Correct, right? Isn't that what we kind of figured out? Somewhere, somehow, if you want to find a way, you're going to fit into a protected class. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Who doesn't fit? Who doesn't fit into a protected class? No. I'm just saying, like you, as a person, somehow, some way, everybody would fit into a protected class. What would you are you in a protected class?
Yeah. Say somebody says to me, I'm going to discriminate against you based upon your national origin, then I'm protected under national origin. If someone says to me, if I'm going to discriminate against you because you're male, I'm protected because I'm male.
Okay. All right. Okay.
That's your point. But if somebody says to me, I'm not going to rent to you because you're a centrist, then I'm not protected.
Okay. So what we're not, that's talking about renting. I think we're back to fair housing, but I'm worried about businesses that are in our township. And I'm going to tell you that this is a true story. A relative of mine owns a coffee shop in the city. Had an employee at a coffee shop who was a terrible employee and was always late and didn't show up a few times and got fired, and it cost him about $40,000. My niece's husband, about $40,000 because he claimed that he was fired because he was transgender. He was fired because he was a terrible employee. How do we protect businesses in the township from something like that happening?
Honestly, that's very surprising. This is an at-will state.
Right.
You would need a lot.
Could you come up and talk here? I'm sorry.
Be fired and winning.
It was in the city of Philadelphia.
Excuse me, if anyone in the audience wants to talk, please come up. We need to get your name and we need to be able to record you as well.
So my question is, How are business owners protected from something like that happening? Because if everybody can figure out a way, because all you have to do, all I have to say is, I was fired because I'm a woman. I was fired because my hair is because I have dreadlocks. I mean, that's all somebody would have to say. And now they have a case. Yeah, I want you to respond.
Well, we live in the United States of America, and I can sue anybody for any reason I want in this country. It's up to the courts to decide whether it has merit or not. So, that's where we're at.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm saying it cost them almost $40,000
Well,
to fight it.
yeah, that's fine, but I'm telling you, I can sue anybody I want in this country for any reason. I can have them served. It could cost them money to fight it. It could get thrown out of court because it has no merit. It's not up to them. It's up to the courts to decide. We have a legal system, and I can sue anybody for any reason, and so can you, and so can anybody else in this room. It's not, that's the system. That's how it works.
Julie's asking you, how do you protect the township from this?
How-
As the human relations.
How do I protect? How do I protect businesses from it? I mean,
Well, no, how do you like insulate the township from this problem that you're now taking on, right? Is that, as a commission, you're taking this on?
no, she wants to know what's protecting the businesses from false accusations.
But you could end up taking this on and going against a business, but how do we protect the fact that, you're on the right side of that question?
Like with the expanded procedures and all this, it's going to end up in court. Okay, that's the way the ordinance is written. It's going to go there if we go to expanded procedures. It's up to the courts to decide who is going to come out a winner and a loser.
But isn't that the nature of this commission, is to try and nip that?
We're trying to nip it in the bud. The nature of the commission is try to resolve it through mediation and not through the court system. We want to avoid costing businesses and people money. That's the first step, is always mediation in the way the ordinance is written.
Looks like Julie has a comment here.
Sorry, I'm gonna put my lawyer hat back on, just because, and for those of you who don't know me, I've worked in Human Relations Commission since my first year in law school. So I've seen this kind of from all sides, including as a business owner. And I think you're absolutely right. Like, frivolous lawsuits can cost an enormous amount of resources and it's very stressful. And I'm sorry that happened to your friend. But the value of having the commission as opposed to just the ordinance, because if you only have the ordinance, then the only recourse is you have to go to court. And that's bad for businesses. It's also not great for the complainant. Like, the victims of discrimination usually don't have money to go hire a lawyer. Like, you have to pay someone a retainer up front to bring your case in court. The value, I think, of the commission is that instead of starting off in court, you start off in a mediation posture.
Is that written in the ordinance that you have to go to mediation prior to filing a lawsuit if it occurs within the township?
Yeah, so how the complaint process works is, one, there's mediation, and just like Phoenixville, it's voluntary. So if neither side shows up, also, just to take a really big step back, when someone files a complaint, they're signing under penalty of perjury that what they're alleging is true. And there's penalties in the ordinance for lying. That's actually baked in there as well. But people have different versions of reality. And so after the mediation attempt, if expanded procedures are enacted, then you go to an investigation. Is there any there? And the commission, or they can appoint a third-party investigator, would have to determine that it's more likely than not that discrimination was the reason the person was fired. And if the commission doesn't find evidence of that, then it doesn't go to a hearing. Then the whole thing stops there. If they do find evidence of it, then there's a second attempt to resolve it. It's called conciliation. And so the idea is that they're trying to cajole the business, say, hey, we found evidence that the reason you fired this person is because they're a woman. Will you agree to rehire them? Or will you agree to stop firing people because they're women? And then only after conciliation fails, then there's a hearing at the commission level. So there are a number of attempts baked in to try to resolve it amicably, which is also better, if you're fired because you're a woman and you have to go file a lawsuit, you probably don't feel great about going back to work at the place.
Well,
So,
nobody should want to go back to work at any place that they think that they were discriminated
yeah.
against.
Yeah. But does that answer the question a little better?
So it's as long as it says that the steps are, you file the complaint, you go to mediation. If that doesn't work, you go to, what was it, conciliation?
There's an investigation.
Investigation, then I just know from his perspective of what happened to him, and it was the city of Philadelphia, and obviously they do it differently down there, and maybe he filed at a higher level, but it cost him a lot of money, and it was very stressful.
Yeah.
And there was no, we are an at-will state. So the fact that, and he has several, probably all of his baristas are, you know, transgender, gay. So why was this one guy? He's like, you guys are baristas. This is all I hire. So like, there's a reason that we hire you because you're good at this job. But that was like, and they put him through the ringer on it, and it was very hard.
I think I can maybe, well, you're a realtor, right?
Yes.
So I'm a real estate broker.
Yes.
I have a license, Pennsylvania.
Okay. Let's just not have a lot of chit chat. Come on up if you're going to talk.
I'm going to answer the question how we realtors are supposed to have what's called errors and omissions insurance. Okay. If you don't have it, you're a fool. Okay. Because eventually someone's going to sue you. Okay. So in there, there's generally, depending on your policy, about $250,000 in fair housing coverage in case somebody claims discrimination under fair housing. As a business owner, it's the cost of doing business. We have that insurance. If somebody claims discrimination based upon fair housing, and God forbid somebody at the company messed up and actually did commit discrimination, and there's a judgment, our insurance is going to cover the payout up to $250,000.
Okay, but that has nothing to do with.
That has to do with the cost of doing business.
It's nothing to do with how this commission works.
I understand, but she's also saying, how to just protect them.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're not going to solve that problem tonight, for sure. And I think we got enough here to move on to, Bernie, should we make a motion to approve Dave to authorize the changes and prepare that for us?
So moved.
Okay. Any other comments?
That include verbiage to allow us to move outside of complaints.
Yeah.
He's going to try and come up with something that we can look at and approve. All right, looks like Barry has a comment. No, we didn't vote on it yet. Let's see what Barry has to say.
Sign in.
Thank you, Barry.
I would be remiss not to stand up here like I have 5 other times and say, there's no need for it. There's never been an issue in this township, ever. We don't have the Black Panthers. We don't have the Klan. Everybody lives in harmony in this township. In a borough where it's a little bit more dense, maybe you have some problems. You have buildings that aren't fit perfectly for wheelchairs or things like that. We don't really have that problem in this township. There's never been an episode or an issue in here. I've asked every time. It's always 0. It's cost our township a lot of money. People in West Vincent live in harmony. Maybe it's not as good in Phoenixville, but here it's utopia. There's no need for this ordinance. There's no need for this commission.
I beg to differ that it is utopia, but I appreciate your optimism.
But we're getting as close as you can get.
Thank you.
Thanks,
you
Dana.
very much. And, oh, go ahead. Did you have one more thing to say, Jim?
I was.
Okay.
Jim Hanna, Hollow Road. I came out several years ago to a couple meetings, and I'm going to ask the same question that I asked of the nice young lady from Phoenixville. I guess I'm late with this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Can anyone in the room give us an example of feeling discriminated against, feeling slighted, feeling insulted in our township?
Sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Maybe they just don't tell you.
Well,
Yeah, I don't know.
I guess that's a problem too.
Everything happens everywhere, and it's, we didn't come here today to repeal this. It's really a lot harder to repeal something that's already in the books. We're just trying to make it right so we can stop wasting resources. And I do think it's wasting resources to keep talking about it. We just need to have it and start focusing on what we do with it rather than keep tweaking it.
Okay.
So thank you very much. Appreciate it. And George? Hopefully that'll be the last comment. We'll move on.
So 2 years ago, over 2 years ago, I think, we had a meeting, township meeting, discussed this exact thing. And there was discussion at the time that there were concerns raised by the solicitor that some of the provisions in the ordinance, and it was prior to Dave's time, but that there were some issues with the way the ordinance was written in it. I specifically remember the manager said that he thought it might open us up to 6-figure or 7-figure lawsuits. And then we were going to meet again to discuss it. This was probably in 22. Nothing's happened for 2.5 years. And I'm just wondering what happened to those concerns.
What ordinance you're talking about? The original ordinance or the one?
Yes.
With this changes?
No, whatever was in effect 2.5 years ago.
Before these changes.
So I don't think there's been any changes since the original.
I think
Yeah.
everything was around the expanded procedures, which are not available at this point. That's something
Is
you
that,
have to
they're
vote
not,
for.
what do you mean by they're not available? They're in the ordinance,
They
right?
have to be voted on.
The board of supervisors need to empower those expanded procedures.
And
They haven't done that yet. They can, but they haven't done it.
they haven't done it in a complaint.
No, I disagree with their interpretation. I think that the board has to authorize expanded procedures generally.
Okay.
And if there is a complaint, then those procedures are available.
So as of now, the expanded procedures are not available according to your interpretation unless the board in public meets to do that?
Yeah,
Yeah,
well, they
yeah.
would absolutely vote in public too.
Okay.
Authorize the expanded.
Okay. And then you're aware in expanded procedures, it gives the Human Relations Commission the power to subpoena.
I'm very aware of what's.
Okay. And you're okay with that?
I didn't say I was okay with that. Just
Okay.
They haven't adopted expanded procedures yet.
Okay. I guess another question I have in general, not specifically on this, although I guess it touches on this. How does something like an adult community work? Isn't that discrimination against familial?
You mean like
Well,
over?
Yeah, you can't have
55?
kids.
Okay, when you said adult community, where you were going with that?
There's
Only
there's regulations about that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there are,
They're allowed.
I'm very familiar with that. There are court cases which have determined that, for example, banks which give special treatment to people over a certain age, that's allowable. That's not discrimination. And there are court cases to that effect.
So can I rent to somebody and say kids aren't allowed? I would just heard that you can't do that. But in an active adult community, if you have a rental unit, you want to rent out your house and you have it in an active adult community and someone comes with kids, what do you do?
Well, there's rules and regulations around that. There's a declaration that's been filed and there's rules
Does
and
this-
regulations, although they've been challenged as to what extent they're enforceable.
Right. And the other thing too, in situations like
This
that,
doesn't apply.
most of the time, before you go into a community like that, you have to sign a contract. Same way that with homeowners association, there's a contract there. And that gives,
It's super.
you give away a lot of rights when you sign that contract. So you can sign away the right to be able to rent to people who have children. You gotta, so when you go to communities like that,
So it's
you're
okay
very
if you-
careful of what you sign because you may be signing away a lot of your rights that you otherwise would have.
Well, what if you signed away your right to rent to people of a certain race? Could you do that?
Well, those laws are not, that would not exist, because that law in and of itself, or that regulation would be illegal. That's. the-
Okay, I
that's
think
discriminatory.
so this stuff's kind of twisted, I think.
It is twisted. You have to follow.
A lawyer once told me that common sense doesn't have anything to do with the law.
Twist turns into a.
So I guess that's where we are now. Okay.
Okay, well,
All
and
right.
we have a motion on the
Thank you.
table and I'd say, yep, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Motion passes. And then we have one more bit of business on here, which I just Love Singh, approve the resolution number 9-2025 to destruction of public records.
I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution number 9-2025, the destruction of public records.
Normally,
And-
there would be
There is
Oh,
somewhere
here
in
it
here,
is.
it tells you what it is.
the road occupancy permits from 2008 to 2024.
Right, and they're already scanned and backed up.
Yeah, but the law that allows us to vote to destroy it has a specific list of how long you have to keep things, these type of records, and when you can vote to destroy them. You're just not doing it because you feel like doing it. You're doing it because you have the ability under the law to do it.
And we also have a backup of it too,
Yeah,
so there's
that's
nothing
fine.
that we're disposing of that we're going to need. Does anyone have any question about that? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. And do we have any public comments? And this would be non-agenda items. Oh, could you come, I'm sorry. I know it's so far. Thank you. If you could just give us your name too, please.
Hi, I'm Beth. I just wanted to say Julie and I had spoken and I filled out the paperwork and I'm happy to volunteer for the
Okay.
commission or committee.
That's
or
terrific.
whatever.
Thank you very much. Thanks for coming up. McDonald?
Beth McDonald.
Thank you, Ben. Anyone else? Kirk?
Yeah, hi, I'm Kirk Reinbold, Birch Run Road. I've been a resident here for the last 24 years. So I want to let you know that today we had our kickoff meeting. We've been invited there's a new program through the Department of Environmental Protection called the Shared Energy Manager Program. And they work with townships on their energy usage, energy savings, things like that. So we met on the phone. Kathy McDevitt and I, we're two of the original clean energy transition team, and I see Dave here. He was another member of that. But we had our kickoff meeting today, and this is a free service of absolutely no cost to us. And we'll be able to use their services and their engineers through the end of the year. And so some of the initial things that we talked about was a review of existing potential fleet electrification options, including both pursuit-rated police vehicles and some of the vehicles used by the road crews. They wanted to do a review of the feasibility of the solar project that we might want to consider for putting on top of the Public Works garage. They're going to help us confirm that the solar array above our heads has been registered for a generator of electricity within the state of Pennsylvania or the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
Kirk,
I thought it was.
I already done that.
You done that? Okay.
Yeah, good.
So we can replace that. They're also going to help look at different solar ordinances as well as electric vehicle ready ordinances and solar ready ordinances so that it's easy for you to install solar. It's easy for you to install an electric car charger down the road, because right now you would have to install conduit and rip everything out. So this is an easier way to do it. Do it when you build. Just run the conduit then. So they're going to get back to us with a bunch of action items. There's some documentation that we need to provide them. I'm going to be in contact with the board and Jim as well to try to make sure that we can get that. But it was just a kickoff meeting, and so we have 10 more months of their free help. Shouldn't cost us anything. And we had, 4 engineers on the phone with us for about an hour and a half. So, they really know what they're talking about, which is great. So just wanted to keep you updated.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kirk.
Yeah.
Oops, Davey, did you have a comment?
I think this is the right time to talk about this since Kurt was talking about energy saving. I go by this building
And the
a
lights
lot
always
at
on,
night.
right?
And the lights in this room are on all night frequently. And okay, maybe the people in charge of the meetings should be more responsible. But we have nighttime police at times, going through. Can't they flick off a switch?
Thank you, Davey. I complain about that too, but I think it is the police. I think sometimes they have meetings in here. And then they leave the light on.
They do get residents that come in the middle of the night and they have to have.
But I
that's
agree
why the
with you.
lights are
It's so bright and you drive by and it's like, I want to go in and shut the lights. I agree with you. Thank you.
Kurt, thank you so much for working on the solar. I just wanted to kind of address one thing about solar. Solar is great. I'm a big proponent of it, but in a lot of places in the world right now, we're losing farmland to solar farms, really good soil, and we should really try and be encourage people to use as much roof mounting as they possibly can and try to avoid ground mount solar systems and discourage these large energy companies from buying up fertile farmland and replacing it with solar panels. It's an absolute disgrace because they can have the technology to build this into shingles and into roadways. In Asia, they're doing it, building them into highways. And I think we need to embrace solar, but the new solar, not by tearing up farmland to produce electricity. The only other question I have is, when do you think you can expect, because I know Eric and Steve and I on the were last on the HRC, when do you anticipate reappointing members? Now, I know we can have at least 4 because Beth volunteered, and I know there were other people that were interested.
I think we could probably get together as a board and make an agreement on that for our next meeting.
Okay.
Because I think we have a few in. I'm hoping to see if we get more people that are interested tonight.
Right.
Because I think that's wonderful if we have more
Because I
participation.
think, right now, I know we have, we know
Someone's standing behind this.
we have 4 right in this room. So I can't imagine not having 5 or more.
Great, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Anyone else? No?
Move to adjourn.
Let's second that. We're adjourned. Thank you very much. Put that on.